Hello viewer, it's good to have you here on your first agricultural TV station. My name is Joshua Ishaya, your guide on the program Aqua Farming. For those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, Aqua Farming is designed to enlighten you, educate you, and also infotain you on everything or in everything that has to do with water. And today, of course, as usual, we go all out to make sure we bring people who really know the game of fish farming. And today, our guest again was proven beyond doubt that indeed he is a consultant. And of course, you can render his services, you can get his services at anywhere, any point in time. If you're watching this, believe me, you can just reach out to us, and of course, we get you connected with this consultant so he can actually set you up a proper fish farm anywhere in the country, even outside the country. None other but Gabriel once again. Gabriel, it's good to have you today on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, today we'll be talking about something quite interesting in fish farming that people have neglected over the years. Some people do not really see it quite important to pay attention to their water. Reason because they feel water is something they can actually compromise when it comes to fish farming. It's more reason why a lot of fish farm has failed, because the water that is here might be different from the water that's over there. So we're all using borehole, but the components in the water differs. So our productivity level is going to differ as well. So today we're going to be looking at the water quality management of a fish pond. Again, Mr. Wase, good to have you.
Thank you.
All right. How can one achieve proper water management in a fish pond?
Yes. Water management is a key aspect in fish farming, because just like you cannot do without oxygen, fish also cannot do without water for a longer time. That means that water must be available at all times in the right quantities and quality. Somebody once said that water does not have an enemy. But if the quality of the water required is not met, that is when you will know that water has an enemy. So in fish farming, there are basic parameters of concern. And those parameters must be taken care of, must be noted to fall within the desired range. Of course, you know, even in humans, there are requirements for water to be fit for consumption. If water does not pass such test, then it is unfit for consumption. Even fish as well. If water does not pass certain conditions, then it is not fit to be used in fish farming. There was a time a client asked why we are always emphasizing on the quality of water, but they are saying that in the wild, in the rivers, that nobody takes account of whatever happens to the water. There are a lot of deaths falling in, chemicals falling in, there are fish there, they are not dying. So why? And my response was simple. What you seek to achieve is not the same as what a fish in the wild can achieve. Of course, you know that for us in culture, within a period of 150 days, which is approximately 5 months, your fish is up to table size of 1 kg and even more. But in the wild, you have a fish of 6 months. It's looking like a juvenile in culture. And this is the difference. So that is to say, in the wild, the water quality is not managed. And so the fish will take a longer time to grow to maturity. And that is one. Then secondly, the survival rate in the wild is certainly going to be slow, lower compared to what you have in culture. And so because you don't control the quality of the water in the ocean, in the rivers, in the streams, so whatever the fish comes across, if they don't, if they survive it, sometimes it can affect their growth. But in culture, it's not the same. And that is why we always insist that proper attention should be paid to water quality in culture. And what are those parameters of concern? Number one, we have oxygen. Just like you need oxygen, I need oxygen, the fish also requires oxygen. And this oxygen enters water through 3 processes. Oxygen can be introduced into water from the atmosphere, what we call atmospheric oxygen. So it dissolves on the water surface and enters the water. It becomes dissolved oxygen for fish consumption. Also from photosynthetic activities that happens in water with the help of the sunlight, oxygen is also given off as a byproduct which becomes useful to fish. Then another method is the artificial aeration of water. You have what we call the aerators that can supply oxygen into your pond. So this oxygen must be met at the right quantities. Of course, it is required that in tropics, at least 5 milligram per liter is the recommendation. So if your oxygen level falls far below that, it becomes lethal to your fish, and that is at the point you see them trying to jump out. They are gasping because they are finding the environment uncomfortable and they want to leave. So you see them jumping up and falling back because they actually cannot leave. But that is an indication to you that something is wrong. So the oxygen level must be maintained, and oxygen levels in water is not uniform all the time, because like I've said, at night there is no sunlight, which means photosynthesis is no longer taking place. And when photosynthesis ceases, oxygen production has been reduced. And if you are not applying artificial oxygen, you only have one source, which is what? Atmospheric oxygen. Now, in your pond, your fish is consuming the oxygen that is present. The microbes, the other life forms that are present, are also consuming this same oxygen. You know, decomposition is equally going to take place and requires oxygen to proceed. So oxygen consumption becomes rapid at night, and then its replenishment reduces. So at night you have higher consumption, lower replenishment, while during the day you may not have the problem. So, but if in general your oxygen supply in water is not up to the optimal level, it's going to affect your fish because it causes stress, and at extreme levels it can result to mortality. Now, apart from the oxygen too, we also have the pH. You know, fish actually requires a neutral pH to do well. And so when your pH goes to the extremes, it becomes detrimental to your fish. Like the actual range required between 6.5, you know, pH ranges between 0 to 14. If it is at 7, that is the best of it. Why you may have not actually achieved that perfect pH, at least it should range between the values of 6.5 and 8.5, which are good for the fish. Yes, slight deviations from these the fish can tolerate, but in most species, especially tropical species, when the pH goes below 4.5, they can hardly survive. This is for adult fish. It is even more severe if they are young fish, because young fish will not tolerate as much deviations as adult fish can. So the pH should range between 6.5 and 8.5. That's why it is advisable for farmers not to take these things for granted. There are common kits that can be used to measure those things. Yes, that you can just test your oxygen level in the water, test your pH level in the water, so you know. Most times farmers don't do all this until they run into trouble, and oftentimes they get to know there is trouble when it's very late, such that reversing the situation becomes almost impossible, or even when it is achieved at a percentage that is not desirable. So it has to be taken, those things has to be taken very seriously. Then another parameter of concern is turbidity. You know, your water, though it's not drinking water, it's not for human consumption, but the water should be clean. The water should be clear enough. You should be able to see through to a certain degree, at least up to 40 centimeters into the water. You should be able to see through. If the water is not clear up to 40 cm deep, then that water is not clear enough. And as the water is turbid, it's going to affect the penetration of the sunlight. And of course, you know that reduction in the penetration of sunlight is going to affect the photosynthetic activities that ought to have taken place in that pond for primary productivity to occur, which means there is now a reduction in primary productivity. So there is a reduction in zooplankton production, phytoplankton production. There is also reduction in availability of oxygen that should have come as a byproduct from that photosynthetic activities. So the water has to be clear. If the water is not clear, then you have to flush it out and change the water. Of course, sometimes there are water sources are not clean enough. If they are not clean enough, that is a situation that requires you to either look for treatment measures to apply to see that the water entering the pond is worthy. If your water quality is bad, it has a lot of negative implications. When we are talking of one of the problems that are affecting farmers, mortality, they will not tell you that I woke up overnight and my fish are dead. You didn't take note when they were giving you signs that something is wrong. And sometimes, there is no time that you see a holding facility or railing facility for fish is void of pathogens. Pathogens are always there. But if the water is at optimal quality, the fish is able to fight back and overcome. But once the quality of the water begins to drop, maybe there is poor oxygen, dissolved oxygen in the water, the visibility is not there, and maybe even the pH is not within the normal range, you begin to see that the fish is unable to fight because you have taken off the arms, so the fish is without anything to fight back. So at that point, those pathogens present in the water will begin to manifest because the fish becomes helpless. They are not strong enough. So quality of the water is very key when it comes to fish management.
Okay.
And if you don't get it right, you can't get it right.
Now, there is this the issue of using water from the tap to run a fish pond, and that of the borehole, and that of the dam. We have this comparison. So which is the best, and how safe is it? Because I believe there are some local fish farmers who assume, because there is presence of alkaline and that's alum in water from the tap, so it's gonna affect the fish. How factual is that?
Yes, when it comes to water quality, there are different sources of water that are available for fish farms. And like you have rightly mentioned, tap water may not just be the best, but can be used in some cases. And for you to make use of tap water, of course, during the process of treatment, chlorine is an element that is used for the treatment of water. It's a component of those treatment chemicals. So of course, chlorine we understand is detrimental to fish, especially younger fish. If they are adult fish, yes, they can be able to tolerate, but of course, it adds stress to them, meaning that the feed consumed, when fish eats, when they consume their feed, part of this feed is going to balance off for physical activity, that is swimming, playing and all that. Then the other will now be channeled to growth, which is what is converted into weight gain, as we call growth. Then when the fish encounters abnormal situations in water, part of the energy conserved will be used to balance off for that, meaning that there is stress exerted onto the fish and it's going to affect the growth of the fish. So if you want to make use of tap water, it is good to have a holding facility where the water will be collected and left for a period of at least 24 hours because chlorine evaporates. Okay. So within that period, this chlorine will evaporate and leave the water safe for your fish. But if you collect the water from that directly into your ponds, it's going to add stress to your grown fish and it's going to cause mortality for the younger ones. Then when it comes to borehole water, it's actually one of the purest forms for fish farming. But like I've said earlier, all the water sources have their advantages and disadvantages. The borehole water comes from underground, deep underground. And therefore, it is not as rich in dissolved oxygen as surface waters. But again, it is very clean and void of any other foreign life forms. When you consider water from the dam or from the rivers, they are subject to inflows, from agricultural runoffs, from industrial waste, from household waste. All of these are going into the water body. Therefore, the water is not as clean compared to that of the borehole because of all these runoffs that are going in there. So the quality of the water may not be as excellent as that of the borehole. But then the water is very rich in dissolved oxygen because of the interplay between the surface of it and then the atmosphere. Because of course, there's air everywhere, oxygen everywhere. So once it comes in contact with that water, it's dissolved and becomes in a form that could be used by your fish. So all of them have the advantage, but the water from this run of natural bodies like dams and rivers, again, if not use a screen, if you don't use a screen to screen the water coming in, it may bring in undesired fish eggs or even other species or other life forms that are not desired. So some of them will actually cause problems for you in the pond. So all the waters are good, but each of them have their advantage and then disadvantage, but all of them can be used. It's just for you to understand that this is what is obtained here and you know how to tackle it. So if you are using tap water, rest it for 24 hours for the chlorine to evaporate, then you transfer to your pond. If you are using water from the dam or from the rivers, always make sure you have a screen that will screen out all foreign bodies that may accompany the water. And if you are using the water from borehole, even that too, you need to take the chemical analysis to ensure, because sometimes because of the difference in the aquifer underground, the chemical composition of the water may not be excellent. So you still have to take, because maybe the rocks within the location where your borehole is situated, yes, may affect the quality chemical. Of course, some natural water underground may contain ammonia.
All right. Okay, some natural water may contain ammonia. Again, those are the words of none other but Gabriel Wase, fish consultant. Let's go on this quick break. When we return, we'll be talking about water quality management right here on the program Aqua Farming. Stay tuned. Just look at it and assume, okay, this water is good? Or how do you really tell about dictating the right water for a fish?
Yes, you cannot just look at the water and detect of its quality. However, from experience, there are certain conditions that you see water and you know, yes, it's not every aspect of it, but there are some certain aspects or parameters that you look at it from experience and you begin to doubt. But you cannot be so sure until the water is tested. So yes, you spoke about the methods of having to know if the water is suitable for fish farming or not. Yes, like I said earlier, we have some kits that are used in measuring those parameters, like the DO, like the ammonia content, like the pH, like the nitrite levels, and all the rest. So there are kits, in fact, there are kits that one single kit can give you up to 5 parameters.
Okay.
Yes, if you have it, you just insert it in the water, it gives you the automatic reading. Alternatively, you can take your water samples to the lab, and in the lab it will be analyzed, you will be given the results, and you will know. But if your water is turbid, you don't even need to go to the lab to be told that your water is not good enough, because water for fish farming should be clear. Yes, while they can tolerate moldy water, it is not the best practice, because that is going to cause reduction in growth rate, because they will need to balance off for the stress. So the energy or the energy that would have been used for growth will be channeled to balance for that stress. So that is going to cause them reduced growth. So for water to be tested, you need the kits, or you can take your water samples to the lab, and then you get the results.
Okay. Now, basically, I've realized that water is one of the key issues when it comes to fish farming, and to some people, they assume that the water you gotten from the wild, that is the water from the dams and rivers, the fish is tastes different compared to the ones in. How factual is that? Very cliche.
Yes, water per se may not have much to do with the taste of fish.
Okay.
However, in locations where there are high industrial waste load in natural water bodies, the taste may differ as a result of, because from research it has been seen that highly densely populated areas or water bodies with discharge from industrial areas, the fish has a lot of heavy metals deposited in them, because they are feeding from that source, they have their water from that source, they are living within that source, and therefore what has been poured into water becomes part of the fish. But the water itself in general is not what affects the taste of that fish.
Okay.
Yes, but the deposition of those heavy metals in the fish is what makes it
Taste different.
yes, differently. So that is why normally there has always been a campaign that whatever water that should be discharged into natural water bodies should be treated, because you cannot tell the resultant effect, the residual effect of those heavy metals that find their way into the water. Sometimes they are consumed by the fish eating, and then the fish deposits them within their system, and when caught up, a human being eats up. And accumulation of these heavy metals is what results to, sometimes some of them become, they are carcinogenic, the long-term effect on humans. So it is not advisable. That is why it is normally in advanced countries, as we have seen, we have read, you don't just discharge water, even from a fish pond. You have to treat the water before you discharge them into a natural water body, for safety reasons. So yes, there are elements of truth in the claim, because of those heavy metals that are deposited and run into the water bodies. So they can cause changes in taste of the fish.
Well, on that note, we come to the end of the show. Mr. Gabriel, thank you so much for coming through again.
Thank you, Mr. Joshua.
Where we're discussing water quality management with none other but Gabriel was a fish consultant and also a fish scientist right here. Like I rightly said, you want to reach out to him for consultation and any setting up anywhere in Nigeria. But rest assured, just a call away, you will definitely get through to us. Until some other time, my name remains Joshua Ishana. Bye for now.